Good afternoon, folks. We are so close to Exile Fest now. In your world, it is tomorrow at 1 p.m. People have been asking me, what time did it start? 1 p.m. It starts on Saturday, the 21st of June at Just Play Games here in Liverpool. We're going to be having an awesome one-page rules tournament there. I will be there. I am not playing. I will be walking around, having fun, talking to people, having a few drinks, having lots of laughs. It's going to be an awesome day. And then afterwards, we're going for a night out on the town. Loads of booze, loads of talking, setting the world to rights, you know. Good mental health weekend. So if you're around this Saturday in Liverpool at 1 p.m, make sure you get yourself down to Just Play Games here in Liverpool, where we're going to be having a lovely one-page rules tournament. You don't need to turn up with an army. You can just turn up for the giggles. You can just turn up to say hello. You can bring whoever you want. It doesn't matter. People have been emailing me saying, can I bring my missus? Yes, of course, dude. Bring whoever you like and come on down. We'll have some fun. And there are wildcard spaces available in the tournament. So if you bring an army on the day, but you've not signed up for the tournament, no worries. We can slot you in, probably, considering, you know, depending on availability. And if you don't even bring an army, you may be able to use one of our armies, the class armies that we're bringing. So there's like 4 or 5 armies that one of mine is going to be there, and 2 of mine are going to be there, I think. And you can use one of those armies in the tournament as a wild card if you want. And you can drop out at any time. It is not a serious tournament. We're here to have fun, all right? There are prizes, there are trophies, there are all sorts of things going on. So, yeah, love your long time. Turn up. It's going to be awesome. We are 24 hours away in your world. I'm recording this on Wednesday. And now the nerves are kind of starting to ebb away a bit. And I'm starting to get more excited, which is good. At the start of the week, I was like, oh my God, we're nearly there. But now, no, I'm feeling pretty good. Hopefully it's going to be a good day. I know it's going to be a good day. So turn up. It's going to be awesome. All right. Let's dive into some hobby nightmares with our first from Rabbids. How's it going, Rabbids? And he says, hi North, this one is for Friday and it is a very short one. I've recently met a wonderful woman through the hobby who is a Black Templars player. That's rare, a Black Templars player. Okay. The issue is, when I was younger, I had quite, shall we say, an eclectic mix of women following me around. Not to be arrogant, but I was quite good at talking the birds out of the trees, so to speak. So I've been around a lot of women who look quote-unquote better than this current lady. Alright, okay. Now, guys, don't jump down this guy's throat. Let's just hear him out, alright? Okay. I'm struggling with the fact that while I do find her attractive, and I do actually love her, she is not as attractive as the women I've been with in the past. Is this something that I need to get over? She really does seem to complement every single part of my life, and what's more, really does make me happy. What would you do in this situation, my dude? Is starting to do my noggin in. Alright, Rabbids. Okay, so first things first, I wanted to get this one out the way because it's shorter. It's the shortest one of the hobby nightmares today. Yeah, you need to get over yourself, dude. You said in your original, you've got like a pre-script here where you tell me about yourself. I wanted to read that out, but I didn't know if I could or not. So, you're 36, right? So, at the age 36, you need to stop chasing tail, my friend. You know? There comes a time in your life where being happy and being content is more important than chasing tail and getting the latest hottie. There is a reason all of those really hot girls that you were chasing back in the day were single. You know, they drive people insane. It's a very good notion to have, right? For every amazingly hot woman out there, there is some poor dude who is just tired of her nonsense, right? And, you know, if you can find that unicorn, brilliant. If you can find the hot girl who's into all the things you like, brilliant. But I'm going to be honest with you, even those girls will have, you know, they will have issues. Could be daddy issues, could be abandonment issues, it could be insecurities. They could just drive you up the wall. Dude, I've been with many girls who over the years have looked like a unicorn. They've been into the hobby, they've been half Irish, half Asian hotties, you know, all of these types, right? Anybody who knows me in real life has met these women before, right? So, but they all drove me insane. They all nearly ruined my life. They weren't good for my mental health at all, right? Now, I think my missus is the most beautiful woman on the face of the earth. I do, okay? But I'm not fool enough to say, hey, you know, is she as good looking as, say, like a There's a very good Blink Bowling for Soup song about this, right? You're not Scarlett Johansson, but you're perfect for me, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, your missus right now may not be as hot as the ones you dated when you were in your 20s, but you need to get over that nonsense. Peace and love and a stable home is the most attractive thing you can offer to a man who's of any worth whatsoever. Like, if you're a man who's got worth, your own peace of mind, your own family home that she's going to build for you, the support she gives you as a strong, awesome woman who stands behind you in all things, means more to you than everything else, okay? Now, I'm not saying go out with uggers. I'm not saying, like, you know, drop all of your standards and just go out with whatever if they're a nice person. No, there's got to be some attraction there. And you do have some attraction to your girl, which is good, right? Okay? But even if you're with a hot girl, over the years, this attraction can wane. I've seen it, right? Over the years, this attraction can steadily go, oh, it's you again. Do you know what I mean? You could be going out with a Scarlett Johansson, with a whatever, right? And over the years, you'll go, oh, God, her again. Right? And she'll do the same to you. A woman can be going out with Henry Cavill, and no matter what they say, after 5 or 6 years, they'll be going, ugh, he's come home again. It just is what it is, man. Right? Familiarity breeds contempt. But the thing is, you have to realize in your life what is important, right? Is it important that you're with a hottie? Or is it important that you're with an attractive woman that you like, who is making your life easier and actively is proud? If you're with a woman who's proud to walk into a room and go, oh yeah, this is my man here, look at him, right? If you're with a woman like that, thank your lucky stars, right? You found a good one. Absolutely. Thank your lucky stars. Treat her right. Okay? So, yeah, get over yourself is my opinion, is my advice. Get it out your head, right? Get some therapy down you. Get it out your head. That is not something you need to be considering. Do not dare think about walking away from this woman, alright? Not for such a petty reason as this. Love means more than that, dude. Grow up. Absolutely grow up. You've had your fun. You know, we've all had fun. And you still have fun with this woman. You find her attractive, right? Just sort yourself out, dude, alright? Give your head a wobble. Have a word with yourself. Okay, moving on to our next hobby nightmare. It is a long one this time. It is from Phil. He says, hello, Mr. North. My name is Phil, and I can be called Phil if you want. I will. There is no issue with my identity being disclosed. I'm a big fan of your show, and I watch it daily. Thank you, man. He says, I have a mild role-playing game horror story to share. Please drink any beverage of your choice at any time during the story. Thank you very much. This story took place during a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game online. Okay, right away, you've lost me. That is a recipe for disaster. Lost Mines of Phandelver was the module, and it's made to be a beginner's campaign for 5th edition. I felt I conducted myself politely during the campaign. I was decisive on my turns, and kept my character's antics well within the G-rated territory. I'm informed that British people use a different letter-based code system for rating content. You might call it U for Universal. Okay, not even PG? And yet, this group had such a tremendous turnover rate. There eventually came a time when it was just I and the DM for week after week. While I shouldn't play the blame game, I suspect my dungeon master was low charisma in real life. We just kept losing players. This is the story of one such quitter. He played a blue-skinned she-goblin variant, supposedly the kind found in an ice biome. His character class was a life domain cleric, and I felt our characters would work quite well together. However, without elaborating on any complaint in particular, the player announced he would leave. That could have resulted in him taking the goblin character with him, but I mentioned to the DM that such a thing isn't really obligatory, that the character can stay. After all, the character is just information written onto a character sheet and other accompanying notes. If the player leaves, we can still use the PC in the story with the resources provided. That seemed okay to me. Waste not, want not. Either I, the player, could take control of this character, or the DM could make this a non-player character. Thus, the character would live on in our game. But the original player objected. He said he doesn't want anybody playing her but himself. That just sounds creepier already. He made some argument that since it's his character, only he would know her well enough to play her accurately. I can agree to that. The DM or I could unintentionally play this goblin as a caricature of her supposedly true self. At the time, we agreed not to play this goblin character, but looking back, I wonder if that was the sensible thing to do. I understand that he feels a sense of ownership over the character, but that request was odd and unreasonable. He can't stand the idea that somewhere in the world there are people who are nearly complete strangers to him, who are playing a pretend with an imaginary character who somewhat resembles another imaginary character that he came up with. Furthermore, I at least assume he came up with the original character. You know how it is. People draw inspiration from all kinds of things, and it's debatable how original anything truly is. I can neither confirm nor deny that he took the character art from somewhere else on the internet, as opposed to drawing it himself. Dude, yeah, you caught him in such a great turnaround of logic there. Yeah. Where did you get your character portrait from? Did you draw it? Oh no, then you shouldn't be using it then. Simple. Yeah, you turn it around on them. Yeah, you shouldn't be using it then. Stop using it. I know it sounds silly, but you know, just for me, man. You just stop using it. Anyway, moving on. It was almost as if this player treats his imaginary character as a real person who shouldn't be depicted in unauthorized works. Right, okay. Here we are. Here is the crux of the matter. That's because, Phil, this person seems to me like somebody who did put a lot of, shall we say, real-world issues that they may be having into their character. This seems like somebody who is playing a blue-haired female goblin. Do you know what I mean? Are we getting what I'm saying here? This is a grown-ass man playing a blue-haired female goblin in a role-playing game. Now, I'm not saying you can't do this as a man. Of course you can. I know many based people who are just normal, who play characters who are women or whatever. But this kind of a thing, there are signs, and please don't insult my intelligence by saying that I'm some sort of bigot for saying this. There are signs that somebody is, shall we say, mentally regressive in terms of their outlook in life, right? Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? There are signs that they're like, well, you know, yes, I'm going to express myself in this D&D game, and I'm going to make my sexuality the entire crux of what I'm doing in the game. And I'm going to tell everybody that I'm a she, them, and then you know what I'm saying. Alphabet people, right? This is where we're going with this. There are signs that these people are around and that they will cause problems. One of the main signs for me is if you're a grown-ass white dude, or black dude, or whatever, and your character is a 3-foot-tall goblin with massive milkers, and, you know, is a they, them, that is a big warning sign to me that you're going to be a problem at my table. That may not be fair to you, but to me, do you know what? If the cap fits, I'm sorry, I've been at too many tables and seen this happen too many times. You're forgetting who you're talking to here. I'm the Hobby Nightmare guy, right? I read about this all the time, and I see it all the time. If somebody like that turns up to my table, I welcome them, but I'm also thinking, okay, I need to watch out for any sort of problem behaviors that may be occurring here, and then maybe step on them straight away and say, no, we don't do that here, right? That kind of a thing. Anyway, it's like he had a copyrighted character or something, or someone who becomes warped when people imagine her as something else. But it's all imaginary. It really shouldn't matter this much, yet the event lingers on in my mind. I know it seems like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but it's something I would like a second opinion on. Well, give me one. Thank you for reading this story. You're a good man with a great YouTube channel. Your advice is helping so many people all over the world. Phil. Cheers, man. Well, giving you my advice, I agree with you. But I also agree with your sentiment that if this person doesn't want their character, quote-unquote, being played in a game that they're not involved in, that is also their choice. They've made that character, but they shouldn't be accusing you of anything like, well, how do you know how to play that person? You don't know what she's like. Well, neither do you, dude, because you're not a female goblin with massive milkers. Okay? Jesus. So I agree with you. But I also agree that they had a right to say, please don't use my character. I'm going to use that character somewhere else, or whatever. You know what I mean? But same thing. Moving on. Alright, this one is from Anonymous. How's it going, man? They say, please leave me anonymous. I know my name is in the email address, but call me Frank. Alright, Frank, I will. Hopefully this is formatted well enough for you. Greetings, North. I've been a listener for a while, and some of the stories on your channel seem a bit crazy. They are, yes. But I think I've got a doozy that might surprise you with its absurdity. It happened a couple of months ago at a local regional tournament. But it's been rattling around in my head again since the recent Chaos Knights Codex release. Fortunately, I remember it fairly well, and because I discussed it with some people online, I can go back to that. For this regional tournament, the problem was within the first hour of my first game of the first day. My opponent was playing Chaos Knights, and I had only played against them once before this edition and wasn't entirely familiar with their rules. I asked Steve, my opponent, if he had played against my Custodes detachment before, so I gave him a quick rundown of my army and the detachment rules and stratagems to try and avoid any gotcha moments. When I was done, he didn't go into much detail about his own army. This is foreshadowing, and there's going to be a lot of this. Well, surely, Frank, right? This would be your opportunity to press him for information. And if he's not being forthcoming, then say, "There, man, like I told you what my army did. Like, what does your army do?" You know? If he then says something like, "Well, you didn't have to do that. All's fair in love and war. Pick up your models, go somewhere else." Simple. Simple, right? During the second round of the game, I charged one of his knights with my Custodes. When I moved the models in for the charge, with a bit of attitude, he asks, why did you stop moving the models from the rear? Myself, because I was trying to move my block. I was trying to move to block my own models to avoid base-to-base contact in case I could pile into your next knight. However, I couldn't do that, as you can see. What do you mean? Steve said. At this point, without pausing my clock, so I'm burning my time for this, but I'm playing Custodes anyway, so I didn't feel like I was going to be hurting for time. I used a couple of my models that had been killed to demonstrate how the situation works. Showed the rules supporting it in the official app on my phone. This will come up again later. I don't need to give somebody a tutorial in the middle of a tournament game, especially using my own time, but I don't see the local players I want to see the local players improve, and he could have encountered this situation in the following round of the tournament as well, so I'm spending my time showing him for his benefit. Fair enough, you should have paused your time, but okay. He seemed satisfied with the explanation and we moved on, but his attitude just kept getting worse. Bottom of round 3, my turn comes up and now I'm ahead of him by about 30 points. He's lost a couple of small knights, but doesn't have much presence on the table because he was playing very cagey instead of aggressively, and this is where everything goes wrong. Steve, you need to take a battle shock test for that unit, he points out. Myself, oh yeah, you're right. I roll and pass and go to move on. I admit, I forgot I needed to do it on this unit, but there we go. Steve, you need to take a battle shock test for that other unit as well. Okay, sure, I say. I'm not sure why, but I don't feel like arguing. Steve, now you need to take one for this character because he's taken a wound. Myself, okay, hold on. That character has 7 of 8 wounds remaining and isn't in range of anything. What rule is that? Why do I need to take a battle shock test for him? I pull out my phone, because at this time in the app, because the Chaos Knights were using the index, I could just look it up without buying the codex, and I wanted to see the text. After the tournament, I looked at the rule, and he was indeed correct, but I didn't know that at the time. Oh, okay. Steve, I already told you my army rule. Myself, well, okay, but I'd actually like to see it. Do you maybe have a copy of it with you? Steve then proceeds to quickly wave a sheet of paper in front of my face. It had text on the side facing away from me. Not that I would have read it before he snatched it back anyway. Myself, look, I'm just curious about the wording and how it works. Steve, do you always play like this? Excuse me? In previous games, have you always played like this? I've never played against you before, dude. At this point, it's just about 10 AM. I haven't finished my energy drink yet, didn't get enough sleep the night before, and I'm very confused as to what's going on. Steve, battle shocks, is this how you play it in previous games, ignoring them till reminded? Myself, what in the world are you talking about? You know what? Fine. I'll just roll the battle shock test you asked me to make, and I'll check the rule later. Steve, no. I want to know why you have this attitude, wanting to just win, and bullshitting to do it. Myself, look, I'm not just going to assume You're bluffing about your rules. I'll roll the battle shock test and we can just move on. Steve, no. You stop shouting at me. I don't need your attitude. Now I'm actually getting annoyed by this guy, and I still don't know what his problem is, but I want the situation to be over with. I'm not sure if he's trying to catch me in some sort of contradiction, but I'm not interested in continuing to get shouted at. Other tables are already staring because Steve has been shouting and waving paper in front of my nose for a solid 3 minutes. I loudly shout, "George!" The tournament organiser, let's call him T.O., immediately walks over as he had been listening to Steve's escalating tirade. Do you know what I think's happened here? This is a perfect storm, right? Because not only is Steve a dickhead, right? But he is also... What do I say? Yeah, he is also right. He's being a dickhead, but he's right. Technically, he's in the right with his rules. Technically, right? So, because he's technically right, he's gonna, die on this hill. He's absolutely gonna die on this hill. He's gonna double down. The tournament organizer. What seems to be the issue? Myself. I'm not honestly sure, but I had to ask Steve to see his rule requiring my character to take a battle shock test, and he didn't want to show me. At this point, I don't even care. I just want to roll a battle shock test so we can move on. Tournament organizer. Steve? Steve. I don't have to show many rules. I already explained them at the start of the game. The tournament organizer at this point seemed like his brain was rebooting from Steve loudly proclaiming this to him, and also waving the printed paper that had his rules on it in front of his nose. At this point, I knew to just keep my mouth shut. Tournament organizer. You're complaining because he wanted to see your rules? Then show him your rules. Steve. Well, he has also just been playing around on his phone. Remember earlier when I said I showed him rules text on my phone? I just calmly unlocked my phone and showed the tournament organizer so he could see that I had the Chaos Knights rules open. Tournament organizer. Look, I'm not going to tell you that you have to finish this game, but perhaps you should just drop it if you're this frustrated. Steve, excuse me? Yes, I said you should just drop it. You can pack up your models and leave if you want to. Steve angrily puts his models away and stomps out the door. Tournament organizer, you stay put. We need to talk. I shrug and nod, put my models away, reset the table for the next game, and go outside to vape. Now at this point, I've got basically nothing to do for almost 3 hours because the schedule is first game, then an hour lunch. I don't want to go around disturbing the other games anymore than they've already been disrupted by Steve's scene. So I basically just try to make myself invisible. I know a few of the other players, but not everybody. And I know I've got a case of resting arsehole face that already makes it difficult to start conversations at times, so I'm not looking forward to my next game if I don't know the opponent. Yes, much like resting bitch face is a thing, resting arsehole face is a thing as well, and I'm into my 40s now, so I'm aware I've got it, and just work around it by generally trying to be friendly, which usually works a charm. One might consider it a minor debuff, but at the same time, combined with being over 6 feet tall, it also means people tend to avoid starting nonsense with me to begin with. Usually. During the lunch, the tournament organiser finds me and asks me what the hell happened. I explain the entire game, and Steve's attitude shift when I explained the melee movement shenanigans. He explains that Steve was being so loud, and he'd never seen me getting into a conflict like that before, that he was about to step over himself anyway after listening in before I called him over. We come to the conclusion that since he's a newish player, and this was his first tournament, he might just be one of those guys that complains about competitive gameplay. Later on, other people agreed, but I also told the tournament organiser that I didn't want any part of any prizing for the regional tournament period because I didn't want what I considered a nonsense win because my opponent walked out, to give everybody else at the event a reason to be salty. The tournament organiser laughed and said I couldn't stop him, but I told him he also couldn't make me accept it either, so we just laughed and moved on. In game number 2, I lose to a guy I've played against a few times before. Our wins and losses have gone back and forth, and it was a fun and friendly game. He was playing Grey Knights and doing his teleport shenanigans. After the game I asked him if I had handed him a deep strike gauge before. He said no, so I handed him one and he thanked me for it. Cool. Game 3. I played against an Ultramarines list that came down to basically the last couple of dice rolls and lost that game as well. But again, it was a very good game. Handshakes at the start and end, and I handed him a deep strike gauge as well because I let him borrow a couple to help out his measurements for his incursors. I've got a 3D printer and normally keep a few handy at home, and an extra in my bag, so I can just hand them out like candy if I wanted to. It costs next to nothing to paint, and people really appreciate it. Again, this is just me trying to be a nice guy wherever possible, even when it comes to the simplest things. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and there's a large 200-player 2-day event. During lunch, I ran into the tournament organiser from the regional tournament, and we chat for a bit. He mentions that he spoke to some other tournament organisers in the area and got feedback that the situation was handled pretty well by the both of us. We check the app for the next round of pairings for the big event and spot Steve's name on it, but he seems to have not arrived yet. We shrug and discussed that he seems to have wasted $150 on a ticket. In the middle of the next round, another local player I knew stopped by my table to say a quick hello, and I asked why he was wandering around so eagerly. Turns out he was paired against Steve, who hadn't shown up, or dropped, and so Steve was still inadvertently screwing with other people's games in a totally different event, giving people free wins and of course nothing to do when they showed up when he no-showed to get his games in. Wow. Wow. I don't think there's a moral to this story or anything. I just wanted to get this off my chest because it's the craziest thing I've ever encountered in a decade of wargaming. Saw losers, saw winners, smelly players, rude players, I've run into all sorts, but Steve is going to be a hobby nightmare of mine for years to come probably. In fact, I already saw he was registered for another regional tournament coming up at a different store and just opted out of it because I didn't want the risk of being paired with this guy due to the smaller player count at that store. All I can say is if anybody encounters something similar, just call the event organiser over straight away. Keep quiet and let them handle it while the person makes an ass out of themselves, as they likely will. Cheers, Frank. Well, here's the thing, Frank. I think a lot of people who you're giving advice to, well, not giving advice to, giving advice about, these dudes are going to be, you give them enough rope to hang themselves, do you know what I mean? Like, you let them talk until they are literally blue in the face, and most of the time, they will detonate their own boat. You know what I mean? Because they know they're in the wrong. Deep down, they know they're in the wrong. They know they've done wrong, and they weren't expecting you to call the tournament organizer over. So you've kind of called their bluff a little bit. Yeah, this is great. Let's go on to our next hobby nightmare of the day, and it is from Andy. He says, "Hi North, me again. Thanks for reading out my last email, and just to quickly respond to your commentary regarding the Magnus incident, absolutely agree with you on that one. I should have done more research on my end, and I still cringe about it to this day just thinking about it. Yeah, you were the guy who worked for Games Workshop who didn't know that Magnus had just come out. You're like, yeah, the next one they should bring back is Magnus, and like the regulars like pointing to it on the side going, dude, he's been out for like a month." So it dawned on me that I never mentioned any gameplay nightmares, and there's about 3 that stick with me from my time working in the hobby. They have a good mix of bad and good. So, not completely nightmarish, but here goes. So, the largest game I'd ever taken part in was a 3v3 session during the Fall of Medusa 5 campaign. I think it fell under the Cities of Death story arc, but every match would determine the overall outcome of the current lore. So I was paired with 2 other Imperium players, and the other team was a mix of Chaos and Xenos. One of the guys on my team would prove to be a bit of a nuisance at the table for all involved. All I remember of him was that he kept on talking about how much money he had and what models he was going to buy next, picking up his models from the table long after the deployment phase to show people. Dude, I hate dudes like this. Right? A friend of mine does this. Like, a friend of mine has recently gotten a very good job, and now all he does, and whenever you go out with him, if he's had more than 1 beer, he'll start bragging about how he paid off his student loan and shit like that. Don't do shit like that to your friends. Don't do that. Right? Because it doesn't make you big or clever. All your friends are looking at you going, dude, you realise even if I have student debt, I'm never paying a penny to pay it off? Do you know what I mean? Most of us don't. It just gets wiped off after like a certain amount of years because we're not making, we're making just under the threshold, You're not some millionaire piped down. And in the hobby it's even worse because the hobby is really, 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 really expensive, right? I don't know, man. Not for me. Not for me, guys like this. Let me just have a quick sip of tea here. There we go. It is time. Let's move on. Now, I don't mind a bit of hobby talk and chatting about favourite subjects and projects, but to do it mid-game seemed a bit too much. He even went as far as to go across the table to where an opponent player was trying to play his turn and started talking at him while he was trying to do things. The player got pretty irate with him. We didn't get to finish the game as it took all day, so I had to wrap it up the next day. I didn't go back to finish it, sadly, so we never got to see how it ended. That seems like a guy with some mental issues there, dude. He had no concept of personal space or times to do things, you know what I mean? Anyway. The one good memory of that game, though, was the orc player of the opposing team. It made me realise that any game involving orcs is always bound to be hilarious. Part of the narrative was that at some point in the game, a battle cruiser would be shot down and parts of the wreckage would fall in random sections on the table. Anything it would land on would be dead and out of play. The orc player had all his boys clustered in the corner and was about to start his movement phase when half his army was crushed by the fallen cruiser. He took it like a champ, though, and laughed it off like it wasn't a big thing, and it wasn't the first time that it had ever happened to him. The next nightmare, though, was when I was paired with one guy who was a bit of a known cheater, but soon got a bit of a dose of karma. So he played Chaos Marines, and at that point, I don't recall many others who played Chaos in our store. We were mainly Imperium players with a sprinkling of Eldar here and there. So because I only had Space Marines, I never owned their Chaos Codex, so didn't know their rules and abilities. To paraphrase, he kept saying things like, and I quote, "I'm doing this thing which I can do cause it's in the Codex," or, and I quote, "So because you don't do this, this activates this ability on this squad, so I have to do that because that's what the Codex says," unquote. I was probably either too polite or too naive to question it so naturally, and so naturally, I lost. He then gets paired with a Grey Knights player who at the same time were about as nails as Custodes are today. And this guy used to play Chaos, so read both codexes cover to cover and wipes the absolute floor with him. I'd left by that point, but a friend told me that apparently this guy went totally ballistic on the Grey Knights player, getting verbally aggressive and was pretty much banned from the store. I guess everybody finally had enough of him. Dude, it always comes back. Do not do this. Do not do this. If you're in a small store, don't act this way. There is always a bigger fish, and they will pummel you. And they'll draw that poison out of you and show it to everybody else who's there. The final one comes from around the end of 5th or 6th edition. I can't quite remember which, but this is where I took a few years out. I had my Ultramarines go up against this guy's Space Wolves. A few things still resonate with me, and it wasn't a bad game, but had a lot of food for thought within it. Dude, these are the worst ones. You know when the other person doesn't cheat, but the game itself is the nightmare, because you just realise you're not enjoying it and you don't like the rules. I had my Vindicator blown up after just a tap from one of his Wolf Riders. Lucky on the dice and all that. It came down to just my Captain and Terminator squad, and here comes his Logan Grimnar on Wolf Chariot. Naturally, I tried to shoot at him, but none of my hits got in, even though it's an open-top vehicle. It wasn't classed as one in the Codex. I only had Stormbolters out in play, and all my Special Weapon Marines had already bit the dust. I could have ended the game there and admitted defeat, but the stubborn bugger in me played on. I figured Space Marines don't retreat, so I just had them a pointless chip paint off the chariot as it unceremoniously mowed all of them down. I remember this guy had just googled tournament-winning army lists and copied it word for word and paid somebody else to paint it fully for him. Now, I'm not against people who commission paint work, that's all fine. Painters need beer money and everybody deserves a nicely painted army. I just think you rob yourself of a vast majority of the hobby if you do so. I find at least half of the fun is the building and painting process, then working out your own army list is tailored to you personally. Anyway, I'll leave it there, but keep up the good work. Many thanks, Andy. I agree, man. I absolutely agree. I think if you commission paint your models, that is absolutely your proviso to do so, but I also think you're missing out on a lot of the hobby. I really, really, really do. Anyway, that is me for now. I will be in Just Play Games at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, where I'm going to be there talking to you all, having a good time and watching you all roll some dice. It is going to be awesome. If you fancy coming along, then just head down. It's going to be 1 p.m. on Saturday the 21st of June. I'll see you tomorrow for Exile Fest. I'm really, really excited. The moment has finally arrived. I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.